Hi, everybody. This is Austin with Fantasy Baseball on Deck. And just to get out in front of it and explain the value of this video. Opening day just occurred, one of my favorite days on the entire planet. I watch around 10 and a half hours worth of baseball to provide a more valuable experience for you all in regards to my favorite hobby. I'm happy to do it. I don't expect anything other than just like good conversations and generally like some friendship. I feel like I have a lot of friends on here now. And also just sort of like, again, a community I can talk about my favorite thing with in a positive and educated manner. So hitting the like and subscribe button, commenting to make sure, like, you know, if there's something I missed, if there's something that you don't understand, if there's something that you would have, rather seen. Like, the whole point of why I do this is to create a more valuable experience advocating for my favorite sport that's actively dying because all of the media entities that are supposed to be upholding and supporting it year round are talking about the NFL draft right now. And it's really frustrating, but opening day is really, really special. Opening day is so cool. I need to pick up my energy here because I am generally excited. I freaking love baseball because it's every single decision that's made, every output in bit of information that you're able to collect and decipher and manipulate, the entire picture of how a baseball franchise is run is generally like in cahoots with the success and the profitability of the business. There's so many variables and moving parts. And why I love baseball, but why I love opening day specifically so much is that we've spent months together preparing for this draft, for our drafts. We have our teams. It's the first time that we're able to put everybody on, essentially like watch our roster perform and try to figure out like what we did right and what we did wrong, sort of thing. Opening day is the most transparent day of the year because every business, every franchise is a business. The Reds are a business. That's my favorite team. It is the only day of the year where they are completely transparent about doing everything that they can to start off 1-0. Starting off 1-0 as a business gives you an opportunity to essentially be more profitable throughout the rest of the year. Winning opening day, winning your opening series, the hotter that you start, the easier it is to sell season tickets. The easier it is to upcharge the value, the market value of the ticket at hand, because the better the team is, the more excitement, the more energy, the better the fan experience is, right? More buzz around town, more free marketing, more free promotions and everything. If I'm going to create a business, whether it's a business to business service, whether it's a business to customer like product, the very first thing that you have to focus on as, I'm an adjunct professor for data-driven decision-making from the medical field, but also value transformation in the College of Business, where I teach. I just won't say that because I don't need people looking up my LinkedIn and stuff. But anyways, so the whole point, the first thing you do as a business is create a valuable product. Quality is number one. You have to create a valuable product that's worth selling to a customer. You can do general demographic and or like market research to figure out like what people need. But if you don't create a product that people need, there's nothing to sell, right? It has to be overall at least perceived as valuable or actually valuable to make people's lives, make them happier, make the ease of operations, whatever it is, right? So what is the quality of a baseball team? It's the product on the field. You're selling an event. You're selling the circus. The circus and baseball directly compete with each other. The circus and baseball is all about on-field talent. Like, what are they able to do compared to the other available options? Also understand that like baseball is competing with Netflix. Like you staying at home and deciding like, I don't need to go to the game. I'll just stay at Netflix and watch 3 shows and go to bed. They're competing with bars. They're competing with the movies. They're competing with everything. They're competing for your time. So quality is number one. Opening day is so important because starting off with a quality product or at least a perceived more valuable quality product, gives you opportunities to generate more and more revenue earlier so that you can better forecast how to run your business in a profitable way throughout the rest of the season. And this is probably the nerdiest video I'm going to have, but it's so important in regards to succeeding in fantasy baseball. And let's just jump into it. I love baseball. Why do I take all this time? It is currently 4:13 in the morning. I watch 10.5 hours of baseball for all of you strangers to succeed at your thing, whether you're trying to win money, whether you're just trying to win your work league, to have bragging rights, it doesn't matter. I'm here because I want to be an advocate in all of the right ways for my favorite thing that's actively dying because it's not covered correctly in the media. Baseball is so special because it's the most transparent business across all of the sports that exist because there's so many variables. There's not a salary cap. There's arbitration. There's contract manipulation, service time manipulation. Sorry, making sure that you're manipulating a young player to stay with your team as long as possible before they actually earn their first free agency and earn their first big contract. It's the most transparent sport from a fantasy perspective and watching it of all of them. But because it's so complicated, because there's so many things to report, all the media is there's 162 games. We're going to drive ourselves crazy. We're going to throw money into this pit to cover it well and get almost nothing from it because we can just post a football highlight of Marshawn Lynch breaking 17 tackles and jumping into the end zone. And we can you're telling me that we can make millions of dollars off of just posting that across several different of the same Instagram reel, profiles that we've created, and advertisers are going to pay us more money to just do that compared to reporting on baseball in a way that's timely, efficient, and or accurate from a journalism perspective. Hell yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So opening day, again, sorry about the monologue, 7 minutes in. I think that's good. It's the most transparent day of baseball because everyone wants to start out 1-0. Everybody needs to sell tickets. So what are they going to do? They're going to throw their best assets. Everyone is all in to go 1-0 for all the reasons I just explained. The ownership needs to be profitable. The management needs to succeed to keep their job. Ownership is actively the bosses of management managing their players, starting off hot is better for everybody. So why opening day is important is that they're going to give you hints into what is the most trustworthy and or sustainable players that they have available. What tactics are they going to use throughout the year? Any game that was close today, you pick up on so many different things of the importance of did someone succeed in spring training and what did that mean? Did that help them at all? Did it matter? A lot of times players, veteran players especially, go through spring training and they have a horrible spring training, and as soon as the games start up that actually count, they're right back to themselves, and there's no really rhyme or reason. It's just I think that they're just trying to stay healthy, and they're giving not a whole lot of effort because they understand that 162 games across the season is 162 games, and that's a bit of a grind. So I created a 17-slide show. I'm going to talk about 17 players. I'm going to talk about a couple different players per division that not only did I see today, but sort of I predicted earlier in our preseason videos on my, essentially on my my cheat sheet. I provided players that were green, bolded, whatever. Here's what I think of this player and why they'll succeed. And then I gathered my hints throughout the day to basically say, was that a good prediction? Was that an ad production? Whatever. But I'm just going to go through 17 players that are not being covered by any website. The ownership is low on them. The hype is low on them, but their production should be out the wazoo, right? So opening day is exciting for all those reasons. It's the most transparent day to sort of again, jump off of ships that you're not super invested into early and onto ships that are more sustainable because of the hints that we saw. So before I get down another rabbit hole, I created this video because I got up this morning. It's opening day. I'm trying to absorb information. I'm trying to read all of the reporting that occurs. And the first thing I see is there's a MLB Fox. So Fox MLB has an account, and they post an Instagram post that says players to watch. And the players to watch were a part of the AL East, and it was one player per team in the AL East, and you slideshow from there. They show the AL East first because the Red Sox and the Yankees are in the AL East, and that generates the most clicks. Two of the players in the AL East to watch out for, because they're going to have a breakout season, Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., two perennial all-stars at very least, their ceiling, two possible MVP candidates every year. That's the insight that you have, saying in the very first slide, Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are going to be players to watch. They're going to have a good season. It's like, oh my God, of course. No one learned anything from that. A monkey could have put that together. So this video is going the exact opposite direction. Players who are going to be super duper productive for their individual teams, who don't have a lot of reporting behind them. No one knows who they are, but here's why they're going to succeed. And we're going to go on to the first player. So in the NL East, I picked, I think, only one player, just to try to keep this as short as possible. And share why I think and why I'm doing things the way that I do and why it's important, whatever. AJ Puk is currently, due to injuries, you could say the number 2 starter in the Miami Marlins rotation. He's going to start tomorrow for the Marlins, and that's super exciting. I've been waiting for AJ Puk to get an opportunity to start since he came up with the Oakland Athletics, one of the best pitching prospects in all of baseball. Came up and essentially was just sort of like put into the bullpen to build up his stamina and to, I don't know if nurse his arm, but you want to protect younger players. You want to protect their young arms. Young pitchers are most likely to get hurt. So anyways, AJ Puk's gotten to the point where all of a sudden, okay, he's 27 years old. We're going to have an opportunity to start lengthening him out. He's only been a bullpen guy. His stuff is wild, but I have this titled AJ Puk Mom Spaghetti because he's finally getting an opportunity, to perform in the starting rotation. And of course the Eminem song, knees are weak, vomit on a sweater already, mom spaghetti, don't mess up, essentially. I know I butchered that horrible, but I think that you're going to get it. Eminem's most popular song, don't mess up. This is the moment that you've waited for, perform, right? So here's why I think he's going to succeed. Career standpoint, 11.4 strikeouts per 9 innings is awesome. 2 walks per 9 innings, awesome. Anything less than a 1.20 whip is something very, very credible, sustainable, something that you can invest into, regardless of what the other numbers are. I think the whip is at this point is just as important as making sure that you have more strikeouts than innings pitched. But this is the only opportunity he's ever had in his career to actually have an ample sample size in the starting rotation to figure out what is his plan. What are their plan? What is their plan for him, right? So with Braxton Garrett, Yuri Perez, Edward Cabrera, and Sandy Alcantara all out for different periods of time for the season, this is going to be our only time to figure out what AJ Puk is as a possible starter. We know that he's a crazy lights out relief pitcher, but when you start to add that volume, he starts to get tired. What will he be from a starting pitching perspective? So I think this is the perfect time to invest into him. He's available in a ton of leagues. His ceiling is super duper high, but we have no idea what his floor from a volume perspective is going to be. He's going to obviously have pitching restrictions, but the Marlins are so hurt across their starting pitching rotation that he's going to be relied upon and required to throw more innings than we ever expected him to when he starts out. So at the end of this, it's all of these pitchers and all of these batters per se don't have a lot of stats behind their name just yet. So, I'm going to essentially project, here's what they've done in the past. Here's what we expect them to do because of individual stats and that derive and really illustrate individual productivity compared to, just their productivity based on how good their team is around them. So essentially, like, what if putting these numbers together with the strikeout ratios and the walk ratios moving forward, each slide is going to look pretty similar and use a lot of the same stats because I'm using like the stats that are most important to me in regards to judging young players that don't have a lot of, again, statistical like numbers to back my opinion. So thinking to myself, if he can get around 150 innings pitched, in 150 innings pitched, that would equate to 209 strikeouts. That'd be 12th in all of Major League Baseball if it was in 2023. And we know that his WHIP is walks and hits per innings pitched is below where we want it. Like it fits in the range that we want. That's acceptable. And he's not giving up a ton of free passes, right? So like this is a player I think that's going to absolutely succeed. He might have a couple rough outings to start the year, especially if he goes to any warm weather pitchers that go to cold weather stadiums at the beginning of the year. It's hard to grip a baseball, like, the advantage hitter in the beginning of the year. So anyways, to end AJ Puck, I think that he's an awesome opportunity. If you have a questionable pitching staff, if you have somebody that doesn't meet the criteria of more strikeouts than innings pitched, doesn't meet the criteria of having a WHIP that is under 1.20 and or has an ERA that's 3.9 or above, like if they have a 4 ERA or bigger, that's not someone that we're super interested in. So anyways, I think that AJ Puck's going to absolutely kill it. I'm excited for him. Next player out of the NL Central, I'm going to go to the Milwaukee Brewers and DL Hall. So what's really important when you see huge trades in Major League Baseball, the media and the content that is created around that trade is, oh my gosh, Corbin Burns, one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball, young Cy Young Award winner. And from an age perspective, is going to the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore Orioles had the best record in all of baseball this past year. And that's going to be huge. And they're just going to talk about the impact of Corbin Burns in Baltimore. But if you think about it, obviously, if you're on the side, think about if you are the Brewers and you trade away Corbin Burns. Why would you trade away your best player? It's because you're getting a lot of value back. You're ditching payroll. You're reloading on prospects. This is the business side of this sport. What are you setting yourself up for to succeed in the future? The Brewers have been a playoff team for essentially the last decade, built on pitching. Those guys are starting to hit contracts, have to ditch them and replenish sort of thing. So when they send away Corbin Burns, I challenge you in those situations where like a big name is going elsewhere. I challenge you to, instead of looking at, oh, what is this player going to do from a super surface level perspective, like, oh my God, they're going to kill it because they're going to have run support, whatever. I want you to look at the prospects that are coming back and have an understanding of how that fits and how that plays into a team system. So I'm not going to talk about Jorge Polanco. He's an older player, whatever. He just got sent to Seattle. But the Eduardo Julian character that is now should play everyday second base. He didn't start today, which is really frustrating. He's going to be more of a platoon guy. But like when you send away a player of that caliber, your first reaction would be, okay, so who's going to like replace? Because they're trying to create a more valuable on-field team essentially to win, right? Because you need to sell tickets and all the things I already said. So now just focusing on DL Hall, the Brewer Crew is number 2. So like truly, like he's a top 100 prospect. This is his first opportunity to get any volume at all. He only had 33 innings pitched last year with his, I think his first season with the Baltimore Orioles out of the bullpen. A crazy high strikeout guy. Like his velocity, his stuff is awesome. And starting there as a foundation is super duper important because missing bats is more important than ever in fantasy baseball. With the pitch clock and the amount more runners that are on base, the more movement that you have around the base paths in general, the more swing and misses that you have, the less balls in play, the less opportunities, the less variables working against you that are going to count, again, runs against you. You get a couple runs against you, you happen to not get any run support, you have an awesome game, and then you end up like incurring a loss. All that's worth fantasy points, but we focus on the independent value. So a great K per 9, a great walks per 9 inning. So only 2.3 walks per 9 innings is awesome. It's not giving up free passes, and below a 1.20 whip. So like a 1.20 whip is important. If you can, the importance in like winning fantasy baseball and being super sustainable is like you have players like DL Hall, who they're big strikeout guys. But let's just say like look at a player like Nick Pivetta. Nick Pivetta is a huge strikeout guy, but like why is he not ownable in fantasy? Like he is all over the place. He walks people all the time. He's missing his spots, though he has crazy movement. He's missing his spots. He's not hitting the corners, so he's getting railed, right? So having that number, that 1.2 or less number, gives you confidence in like the sustainability of a player. It's not about like all about movement. You have to be able to like control where your ball's going. But if you have movement and maybe you miss your spot, you have a little bit more of an opportunity to get out of it unscathed. So the strikeout piece is super important. The whip is almost just as important to me. So this is going to be he's the number 2 starter in their rotation. The Brewers are still going to like try to compete for the NL Central. Obviously, every team's competing, but if he hasn't thrown more than 33 innings in a game. The most we can expect out of him is around 150 innings probably this year. And I'd say more likely like around 120 innings, given how young he is. But he's also he's the number 2 prospect, or like number 2 guy in that rotation. So what can we expect out of him? Across 150 innings, maintaining ideally the same whip that he had this past season, he would throw 181 strikeouts, which is awesome for a pitcher. He'd be 30th in Major League Baseball with only 150 innings pitched. So again, this is an opportunity, kind of like how you evaluate players that don't have a lot of volume behind them. You like use the stats that you had before and multiply it by the numbers that you see on the screen. So I have a lot of faith in DL Hall. I'm really excited to see what he does. I don't have him on any of my teams. It's just like the way that like the drafts worked out or whatever, but like he's absolutely a player that I have queued because I don't have anyone I can draw up right now. I'm really confident in my rosters because of all the practice and different things. So on to the next player. Bonus. I want to talk about Will Benson. So Will Benson with the Cincinnati Reds. The biggest surprise I think with that roster today is that Spencer Steer, one of their best players, their 2-hole hitter all this past season, actually hit in the 7-hole today, and that like wasn't a thing all year. That was a big surprise. Will Benson moved up from the 9-hole hitter all the way up to the 2-hole hitter. So moving on up, best 9th hitter in baseball essentially was his like tagline this past year, because he really hit his stride and was one of our best contributors when he was on the roster. So with injuries to TJ Friedel and Matt McClain, as well as a suspension to Noviel Marte, Will Benson is a super productive player, like from a quality perspective, but just didn't have the volume to own him before. But now seeing that he got put in the number 2 spot in the lineup, and he's going to be expected to play every day because of the injuries, this is when we take our opportunity to invest into him to see like what he's actually made of. And if we look at his 2023 stats, 275 average, anything above 240 is ownable. Obviously, the higher that you get, the better that you get, but you want to make sure that the total bases per hit is also like around as close to 2 as possible. So a 1.81 total bases per hit. So like almost a double, 1.80, like 180% to 200% of what would be a double essentially is awesome. So that's great. And also with super young players, really young players are more susceptible to striking out a ton. And like, though I don't really track strikeouts, so Austin Riley strikes out. I think like the 4th or 5th most in baseball, but because he hits 280, like when he does make contact, like he's super productive. I don't worry about the strikeouts. But if like a player is super young, they're striking out a ton, then also they have a lesser chain than like a player like Austin Riley or like a Kyle Schwarber, right? Like they're not veterans. Therefore, they're more likely to lose playing time. So in this regard, I'm sharing the on-base percentage to say that a plus 400 on-base percentage is absolutely elite, like all-star MVP candidates, right? So the fact that Will Benson's at 365, that's very, very good for a young player. And then again, if he's going to be a full-time player, get around, so if you play 550, if you get 550 at bats, that'd be 600 plus plate appearances. That's around 150 games per year out of 162. Marcus Semien, knock on wood, every year leads the league in plate appearances and at bats because he plays every single day. And he's well into the 600s, almost 700 at bats every single season. That's what you should expect for a player who plays every single day. But Will Benson, ideally, if he plays 150 games at 162, which is after day one, in a possibility, what can we expect out of him? What can we project out of him? And aggregating his stats to essentially match project what we're looking at. I should have already had this loaded in here. But if I look at Will Benson and the quality of his individual production. So if I'm looking at his projections across 150 at bats without strikeout penalties, which I play in mostly leagues without strikeout penalties, so this is important to me. But if I still filter by that to make sure, if everyone's given the same amount of at bats, Aaron Judge gets the same amount of at bats as Bryce Harper. Who scores more, right? And I think that's important again to judge players that don't have a lot of volume. If they're only halftime player this year, they're moving into a starting role because they earned it. How do you compare them against a veteran from the year before, right? So that's what we're doing. And if you look at it, it doesn't take long to figure out that Will Benson, if he was given the same amount of at bats as Pete Alonso being a top 25 player, someone who hits 40 plus home runs every year, essentially, what is the difference between the two of them? If they were both given the same amount of at bats, the same amount of volume in their situations, Will Benson would score 3 less points than Pete Alonso. So to me, that's a huge value, right? This is a way of uncovering really valuable players. So another example that we're running into and we'll talk about later is Royce Lewis. Nolan Jones are not super highly rated players. Matt Wallner's available in every league, but he hits it he's on a platoon. So it's this is how we figure out and uncover people before they become popular and we lose out on their on the opportunity to essentially own them. So across 550 at bats, we could project with honestly a lot of confidence that Will Benson's around a 21 home run, 36 stolen base guy. And that would be from an individual production perspective across all batters, all positions. He'd be 18th in all of Major League Baseball. So it's projections. It's limited playing time this past year, about half the playing time, but he's a really athletic, I think, special player. So on to the next one. The NL West is really interesting. There's a lot of players in the NL West that I actually would have talked about. There's Kyle Harrison would be a player that I didn't talk about. Jackson Merrill would be a player that I didn't talk about, but we'll move on to the ones that we did. And just because I wanted to keep this video shorter, and I know I'm going to end up going to close to an hour. I don't know how I do this, but there's just so much information to share. Michael King is one of my favorite players in all of fantasy baseball this year for a bunch of different reasons. So just got traded again. Juan Soto, one of the most reputable names, generational talents in all of baseball since I've been alive, is moving from the San Diego Padres to the New York Yankees. He had his first game today. First thought, what's coming back to the Padres for one of the best players in all of baseball? And the main piece was Michael King. And the main piece was Michael King for a lot of reasons. In 2023, 11 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. Though he was a bullpen guy, and the bullpen guys have an easier opportunity to inflate their strikeouts per innings pitched because they're only facing 3 batters per time. So it's easier to just absolutely exhaust yourself because you only need, at your floor, you only need to face 3 batters. So that was gross. I'm sorry, everybody. So 11 strikeouts per innings pitched is crazy. 2.8 walks per 9 innings pitched. So his control's really, really good too. And then that 1.146 whip is incredible because again, we're trying to get anything lower than 1.2 whip. So what if he goes 180 innings pitched? I've already read reports that say that some of the reporters around San Diego that cover the team have said that they fully expect him to be unleashed. He's 28 years old. This is the year that his volume is going to be unlimited. They need innings, like they need people to eat up innings between, oh my gosh, Joe Musgrove, but then Yu Darvish as well. Like those are two older guys that you don't have to worry about. But Michael King being able to take 180 innings is going to be crazy good for a roster that missed the playoffs last year with 126 plus 126 run differential, right? So the stats that were really like focused on for a young player, crazy good strikeouts, keeps people off the base paths, doesn't give up freebies, and also is like very efficient from a walk hit perspective per innings pitched. So if he got 180 innings, we could expect him to throw around 220 strikeouts with a pretty high confidence interval. And that would be 5th in all of Major League Baseball. That's crazy. And then if you look at his individual production, so take out wins and losses, essentially like from the equation, take out the quality of his defense behind him, the individual production for him as a player across all of fantasy baseball would be 7th. And this guy is a late round pick, right? Nobody really knows who he is because if Juan Soto is in the same sentence, he's going to be the guy that's not as well talked about. And he piggybacked off of Joe Musgrove in the second game versus the Dodgers to open up. So there's some people that think, oh, he's just a bullpen guy. I could trade him away. I would trade for Michael King. Of all the people I'm going to talk about, Michael King is absolutely someone to invest into. But this is the cheapest you're ever going to get him. Next is Nolan Jones. Nolan Jones traded from Cleveland to Colorado this past year. Bad move by Cleveland. Because of his underlying individual productivity. So before I say anything, Nolan Jones did also have the highest average on expected outs. So like balls that were put into play by Nolan Jones fell for like fluke hits more than anyone else in baseball this last year. But the underlying individual stats are still promoting someone who I think is going to be a top 10 outfielder this year. And I mean that. Of all of the outfielders in fantasy baseball, that's the most loaded position. I think that Nolan Jones is going to be in the top 10. You can book it. Traded to Cleveland in 2023 is 2023 stats. 297 average is crazy. And then pairing that with a 1.83 total bases per hit is, that's a first or second round pick if they were able to sustain that, right? So we'll compare him against his peers with those exact stats. And again, he doesn't strike out. He also doesn't strike out. And for how big he is as a 6'5" individual, he's fast, like 389 on base percentage, with 400 on base percentage being like a Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, like those people who are absolute differentiators at those positions. And then again, last year he was a part-time player. He didn't play for the entire season. If I'm looking for, again, he's up here. I'm looking for, why am I missing him? Nolan Jones is at the top. Should be at the top. Okay, so 11th. So because of this title, the columns up top. In all of baseball last year, if you gave every single batter in baseball the same amount of at bats so that it was equal, Nolan Jones is going to be an everyday player hitting in the 3-hole for a bad Colorado team, a Colorado ballpark that is the most hitter-friendly ballpark just about in baseball. And he would be individually the 11th most productive batter, no matter the position, in all of baseball, given his stats from this past year. So Kyle Tucker, who's a first-round unanimous draft pick for a great offense, a great team being the Houston Astros, Nolan Jones per 500 at-bats, assuming he's going to get the same amount of volume this year because he's a full-time player. Kyle Tucker's been a full-time player. You can make those leaps of faith and say, I can invest in Nolan Jones because he, per quality of at-bat, is the same player as Kyle Tucker, at least for 2023. So I had him highlighted. I tried to come away with him as many times as I possibly could across all of my drafts, and I think he's going to be an incredible player. If we did that across 550 at bats, 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases, that would be 11th most productive, again, in all of Major League Baseball. So I think that's another player that has not gotten talked about hardly at all, but is going to be a major contributor. Now going to the AL East, I'm not going to talk about, believe it or not, Juan Soto or Vladimir Guerrero. Instead, I'm going to talk about Ryan Pepiot, Pepiot, however they pronounce it. But another situation, Ryan Pepiot, every time he has an opportunity to pitch for the Dodgers, was lights out. Had some injury issues, minor injury issues, but like every time he touched the mound, he was untouchable, right? So if the Dodgers are putting together a World Series roster, they're paying more money than anyone in baseball for the last almost decade to not win a World Series, right? So like they're still in this window. They figured out that they're the only team in baseball essentially as well that they can defer all their money. Like they're to me they're cheating because not every franchise business has the liquidity, the funds to make those sort of deals happen. Trade away Ryan Pepiot, who obviously has a lot of upside, but is a super young player, to get Tyler Glasnow. Tyler Glasnow is going to dominate that headline. Let's talk about Ryan Pepiot. But why is Ryan Pepiot like important? And he is a master baiter. So like he doesn't strike out a ton. He's getting contact. He's baiting people into essentially putting themselves out because he's not a super strikeout pitcher. But these people like a Ryan Pepiot, you can see this kind of the same results of like when Justin Verlander won the Cy Young with having 30 less strikeouts than innings pitched. You get those guys that are like super control guys. They're more volatile because they don't have strikeouts to lean on when like things do go wrong. But Ryan Pepiot's like just under that number that we want. So anyways, the 8.14 strikeouts per 9 innings is not like is below where we want it to be. We want it to be at 9 or more. But we look at his walks per 9 innings pitched. 1 walk for a complete game, he walked 1 person. That's crazy efficient. And throughout his career, a 0.762 whip is unheard of. Like that's like Cy Young level pitching stat essentially. So like if you can also put into grasp, like the number 1 pitcher in fantasy baseball this past year was Garrett Cole across most fantasy formats over Spencer Strider. And even though Spencer Strider had like 60 more strikeouts than Garrett Cole, so 60 more points just in that regards, Garrett Cole was keeping that many more players off base. He's just so efficient. The more efficient you are, the more longer you're able to go further into games. Like Garrett Cole didn't have near the run support as Spencer Strider did, but because he was so efficient, he was able to, again, come away with his first Cy Young award. So that's kind of the value of Ryan Pepiot. He's going to have an innings restriction, but because he's so efficient, he's going to have an innings restriction with the Rays. But like because he's so efficient, he's not so reliant on strikeouts. He's going to get out of innings quicker, and he's going to give you an opportunity to earn wins. He's going to give you an opportunity to earn those subjective points that we can't really like 100% like guarantee and hope for. Quality starts, if you get bonuses for quality starts, this is where he's going to kill it, is being super efficient, not getting hit hard, and relying on his defense. And the Rays always have a good defense. So if we gave him 180 innings pitch, which is not going to happen, he would only have 162 strikeouts throughout the year. That'd be 38th in all of baseball, which is okay. But his individual production, again, per innings pitch, is second in all of baseball. He's the number 2 most productive player in all of baseball per innings pitched. So if I go to starting pitcher evaluation, and I highlighted red all the pitchers that are either hurt or relief pitchers that like don't necessarily qualify. But if I go to the actual value, take away the wins, take away the losses, what is the actual value of this pitcher by themselves, no matter what the result of the game is? It's just them versus the batters. And I highlight by, again, like most points per. These people are all hurt. Tyree School is number 1. Number 2 is Ryan Pepiot. Number 3, Blake Snell, who just won a Cy Young award. So, and then Spencer Strider, like these people that we're putting all of this investment into in the first round, you have a guy that a lot of drafts probably went undrafted, being Ryan Pepiot. And that's why I think this is important to share. So on to the next guy, the AL Central. This is not the Guardians updated roster, so don't cancel me, or like the logo, but so don't cancel me. Garrett Crochet, he just had an awesome game today. He was named as a big surprise, not to me, the opening starter for the Chicago White Sox. Obviously, it would have been Dylan Cease if they still had him. It would have maybe also been Giolito if they didn't trade him away and get hurt, whatever. But here's the importance of Garrett Crochet. So like the joke for this one is like none shall pass. So when you add the value of a player who is not only he's not walking anyone, he's giving up some hits, he's not walking anyone, and has a crazy strikeout rate. This is really the opportunity for like a generational talent, which Garrett Crochet is. In his minor league career, he had anywhere from like 8. There was a couple different stops where he had like a 16, a 14 strikeout per K9. So post his Tommy John surgery. So he's like in 2021, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry, guys. Round 1 in 2020, he's 11th overall pick by the Chicago White Sox. He had Tommy John surgery, hurt his elbow. Since Tommy John surgery, so after the surgery, he's had almost 2 years to recover since coming back to the major leagues. His K per 9 is 14.6. The goal is 9. 14.6 is impossible to maintain for an entire season, but like that's crazy. 4.4 walks per 9 innings pitched so far since he's come back. This season alone, in spring training, in his first game, opening day against the Tigers, he's at a 0.35 walks per 9. He's not walking anyone. So we're combining that crazy high strikeout rate with even better control numbers than the control pitchers that we're looking at, like the George Kirby's of the world and the Justin Verlanders and things. So you're combining a crazy high strikeout potential with an extremely efficient pitcher. This is the recipe for like a Jacob deGrom sort of thing. I'm not saying he's going to be Jacob deGrom. I'm saying that he has the ceiling to be that, and it's a very rare combination. There's not many people that exist in general. Like you have to sometimes wait 5 years to sort of have these stats to come around. His whip, so walks and hits per innings pitched, is so far since his Tommy John surgery across all levels, 0.762. This so far in 2024, still below 1, 0.888. Incredible. So he was allowed to go 86 pitches today. He went 6 innings pitched, 86 pitches, 8 strikeouts. Awesome. What if he was able to go 180 innings pitched? I don't expect him to, but what if he was able to go 180 innings pitched, and instead of 14.6 K9, let's drop it down to just 12 strikeouts per K9 essentially. And if we were to allow him to go around 180 innings pitched, he would accumulate 240 strikeouts, which would be second in all of Major League Baseball. More likely, he'll get around 150 innings pitched. If we did that, he would finish with 200 strikeouts, and he would be 16th in all of baseball. If we let him go with 180 innings pitched, his individual production, without wins or losses, being on a bad team, would be second in all of Major League Baseball. Ideally, he'll only be able to go 150 innings pitched, and his individual production would still be second in all of baseball. So Garrett Crochet has the opportunity to be one of those players that are similar to the evolution of a Spencer Strider. If you guys have been with me from the beginning, I spent 5 episodes in a row screaming to the heavens, everyone add Spencer Strider because he's going to come out of the bullpen. He's going to be a starter. He's going to be the most valuable pitcher in baseball. And nobody really gave you a whole lot of flack. Some people added him, some people didn't. But now he's the number 1 pitcher in baseball. This is a guy that has a lot of the same tendencies, a lot of the same skill sets, but just doesn't have the offense. So he's under the radar. He's available in every league. I have him in every league. I drafted him as my last pick in every league, and I've after seeing the results today, pretty happy with that. Next, at least for the AL Central, I wanted to focus on Royce Lewis, and unfortunately, he got hurt and he went for an MRI today. They're waiting for those results for a quadricep issue, but the Minnesota Twins happily let go of Carlos Correa a couple of years, and then he signed with the Giants, and then he also signed with another team. He failed 2 physicals, maybe the Mets or something. and then came back to the Twins, they were completely happy to let Carlos Correa leave because Royce Lewis is literally the truth. Like Royce Lewis was outside of the top 100 this past year in the draft. Again, assuming he's healthy and hoping that he's healthy, this is the value of Royce Lewis. He's going to absolutely be, if he can play a whole season, he's going to absolutely be a top 50 pick overall in 2025 because of these reasons. In 2023, he was only able to acquire 217 at bats because of he's torn his ACL twice. He had a 309 average, which is elite. For anything over 300 is crazy, while maintaining a 1.78 total bases per hit, which is wild. I think that if we look at the stats, total bases per hit, if I go to batters and I go to total bases per hit, this is just measuring how powerful people are. So like Joey Gallo, total bases per hit, more than anyone else in baseball, but he's not ownable because he doesn't have a 240 or above average. The only player in this, in this first bit is Aaron Judge, who's a mutant, and we know that he's successful. But you sort of like do the calculation in your head of like why each category is important. Average, total bases are like per hit is important. Obviously, I talk about all the time. But here I'm focusing on Royce Lewis. So Royce Lewis was 83rd or 82nd in all of baseball. If we look at the players around him that he's like similar to with that 300 plus average, like Bobby Witt Jr. was a player that's similar. Obviously, Bobby Witt's making up a lot more from a speed perspective. Same thing with Corbin Carroll, Manny Machado, players that are huge. Kyle Tucker, Nolan Jones, 1.78 bases per hit is very, very good. So again, that's me illustrating that. And then his on base percentage is again 372, which is awesome. If again 400 is elite, 372 is really, really good. What if he got 550 at bats? So what if he played 150 games out of 162 games? He would be on pace to be a 38 home run, 15 stolen base player as an individual, taking away all the runs, the RBIs, those bonus points that we can't predict because they're dependent on other players around him succeeding. He'd be 10th in all of Major League Baseball for batters, and he was in the 120s essentially on ESPN pre-ranking. So it's a player who might even like get dropped after today if he's going to the IL or whatever. If he ends up going to the IL, that's really sad because he's lived on the IL so far throughout his career. But this is the best free agent pickup you could grab if he does hit the IL. I think the world of Royce, I have him in a couple different leagues for the reasons I just said. Now going to the AL West, which is loaded with all kinds of people I want to talk about, but I kept it short. Only 2 players. Wyatt Langford, number 6 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. Today, he made his Major League debut. He hit the 5-hole for the World Series winning Texas Rangers. And he has had essentially the greatest spring training that a player could possibly have, in spring training. So all we have are minor league stats, and I think maybe he was on the World Series roster last year. Evan Carter was. I think his debut, Wyatt Langford's debut was today. Hit the 5-hole. His spring training stats, 365, almost 2 bases per hit. So he's hitting 365. That would be the greatest batting average in all of baseball, essentially like baseball history, while averaging a double. He would be a unanimous perfect vote MVP. He would break records. That's unsustainable. There's no chance he can do that with a 423 on base percentage. So his spring training stats, this is when we kind of determine what did that actually equate to? Each team is going to look at their spring training performances, but they're inevitably going to compare them to the past performances and past production stats they have, and then also kind of cross multiply that into a matrix that sort of comes up with a valuation score that includes their overall prospect grade. So what is their potential ceiling from a scouting perspective, comparing that to what the past stats we have with the current production in spring training. And if Wyatt was able to continue this throughout spring training or into the regular season across 150 games, he'd hit 52 home runs, he'd steal 20 bases, and his individual production would be first place, and it'd be an absurd number. So it's not really super important, but I think, again, the ceiling potential with this player, he's the number 6 player in all of baseball. He made the opening day roster. The Texas Rangers are going for it again. I think this is a super easy player to give a chance. He's most likely not available on the free agency pile, but again, this is going to be the easiest time for you to trade for people. And then the last, I'm pretty sure this is my last slide. Zack Gelof didn't obviously have an awesome game to start out opening day with the Athletics, but he's going to hit between the 2 and the 3 spot every single day. The Oakland Athletics absolutely beat the brakes off of their players that are worth anything, because what you do is when they're super young, if they show any promise, you have to get them the volume. You have to get those stats, because what they're doing, having more stats, it's almost like credit, like a credit card. It's better to have bad credit than it is to have no credit at all. You've heard that before. It's better to have a large sum of not awesome stats compared to not a lot of stats at all, right? It's very similar across how baseball is evaluated. So the Oakland Athletics, again, focusing on the baseball perspective, the Oakland Athletics are always putting their players up younger than just about anyone. So they're trying to get them as many bats as possible, as young as possible, before arbitration, so that they can trade them away for more assets in return, because they have no plan or ability to sign people to long-term large value contracts, regardless if they're a playoff team. They've been a playoff team, I feel like, in my lifetime, half the time, maybe even more than not. Their success over the years is crazy to me. But understand that his pedigree is not super duper. It's not super high. He's not super highly touted, but to me, he's a diamond within a tire fire. And I'm relying on him to be my second baseman across most of my leagues. So 267 average, anything above 240 is commendable and keepable. The most important piece here is that 267 average is above average, but also that 1.89 total bases per hit is incredible. The on-base percentage is good enough. 337 is not as high as some of the other players that we just saw, but given that he's hitting 267, you can clearly see that there's 60 points between there's 70 points between his average and the amount of walks that he incurs. So he's seeing the ball well. Is the player that if we invest into, he's going to get he's going to get more than 550 at bats. He's going to get 600 plus at bats, knowing that the way that the A's operate, he's going to be a 29 home runs, 29 stolen bases player. And for the absolute cost of nothing, I almost guarantee he's on the free agent pile. His individual production is going to be 20th in all of baseball if he was able to maintain what he did last year. So that's the end of today's show. I don't know how to make a quick video. I made 17 slides, thought that I could maybe get through it in 30 minutes. Ended up being an hour, but why I think I succeed on YouTube with you all is I've gained the trust because of the amount of quality and the time that it takes me to make these slides and make it look in a way that's attractive, but in a way of really understanding the concepts so that you can make educated decisions on your own. I hate the concept of just going to a YouTube channel and essentially people just throwing 20 plus opinions at you in a 20 plus 30-minute podcast, and then not explaining why they think that at all. There's no numbers behind it. It's just, here's my gut feeling, move on, and then never be accountable to that gut feeling. And if you follow that advice and it completely flops on its face, they're still making content and they'll never stop. But with me, I again try to teach you the tools and how I evaluate players and why I succeed, so that you can make better decisions on your own when we're not talking together, or at least communicating through video. So just as a hint sort of thing, I talked about Garrett Crochet. He got the loss. He 6 innings pitched, no walks, 1 earned run, 5 hits. Incredible day. Got the loss. So he should have 19 points at least if he would have gotten the win. Let's say that was a 24 point pitcher, and he's my last pick in every single draft. He's owned by 8.7% of leagues. And I just to again prove that I had him before he went off today. He's in that league. He's there in that league. He's also there in that league. So just sort of like want to, I'm not even showing you my freaking slime. Stupid. Gosh darn it. Garrett Crochet. He's, again, oh my gosh, he's there. He is, don't you freeze up now. He's there. He is, God damn. I'm sure that I don't have to do this. I'm sure that you believe me, but he's also there and he's also there. So regardless of the format, head-to-head categories, doesn't matter. I think he's going to be super duper useful and quality, as well as like I own a lot of the players that I just talked about for the reasons I just talked about. But anywho, why I make the show again, like I think that I just want to create a more valuable experience for the viewer. So I really appreciate any amount of likes, subscribes, comments. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what wasn't helpful. Let's look forward to the rest of the season. So I'm just gonna stop this because it's 5:03 in the morning, and I look forward to the feedback and happy baseball season. All right, go Reds. Goodbye.